I was literally gobsmacked at this information.
Welcome back to Moose on the Loose. My name's David. Today we got a video here from Michelle Ferreri giving a passionate speech. Another one. She did one maybe just a few weeks ago. She's back at the House of Commons. Another speech really just hitting the nail on the head of what's going on in Canada, the heartbeat of Canadians. I know for me, it just feels like my concerns are felt in Parliament, in the government, which you don't feel like with Justin Trudeau. This is a man who just tries to cause as much suffering as possible and denies everything that he's doing in the name of climate change. He has no problem pushing the people of Canada to the brink of extermination in the name of climate change. We know that's really not going to do anything. Seeing how we don't affect the world's climate all that much, 1-2% max. Michelle Ferreri is on point here with this speech. She's the Shadow Minister of Family and Children, and this is the kind of person you want in this role. In this speech, she talks about how she met a woman who runs a food bank and how there's so many military families who can't make ends meet. They're going to a food bank. They're increasing the rent, the cost to live for military personnel. It's absolutely disgraceful.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. And it is a real honor to stand in the House of Commons today and to speak on such an important committee report. For folks watching and paying attention at home, this is from the National Defence Committee report. It is the 8th report, Standing Committee on National Defence, an increase in rental housing costs for Canadian military personnel that says, given that rent for Canadian military personnel living on bases is increasing this April and at a time when the military is struggling to recruit and retain personnel, the committee report to the House that the government immediately cancel all plans to increase rent on military accommodations used by the Department of National Defence. Now, as my member and colleague from Selkirk has mentioned and eloquently stated before me, this is a pretty serious thing, and I want to tell you a story about what happened recently. I traveled to New Brunswick, and I went to the Oro-Moncton Food Bank. Now, the Oro-Moncton Food Bank is run by incredible volunteers, like most food banks across this country that have seen historical high usages. If we could, in this House, just a round of applause for the people and volunteers that are feeding Canadians across this country. I think that would be amazing. And when I got to Oro-Moncton, I walked in with my colleague, and I can never remember Richard Bregden's riding name.
Cpac Mactaquac.
I can never say it properly. Cpac Mactaquac. He's an incredible man, so I'm sorry, Mr. Bregden. I know we're not supposed to use names in the House. I know. But I walked into this food bank, and there's these two incredible humans there. There's Elizabeth and Jane. And we walk into the office, and I believe the woman behind the office, her name was Dolores, and they were working. And Jane was standing in front of a map of the area that they serve. And in the area, you can see this is a rural kind of area, and she's talking about the record usage of food bank usage that they've seen since they opened, which was 13 years ago. It has just steadily gone up. And they serve about 450 families a month, which is a shocking number. And while Jane was talking, she was telling me this number, and I happened to look behind her, and the map behind her had this big patch in the map, and it was CFB Gagetown. Now, for people who know the Canadian Forces, CFB Gagetown is Canada's largest training facility. Most military personnel go there to train. It is a phenomenal facility. And for all of our men and women who've served in uniform, most of them have at some point served in Gagetown. It's incredible. And so I don't know why, but I said, well, you wouldn't be serving anyone from Gagetown here at the Oro-Moncton Food Bank, right, Jane? And what she said next to me literally shocked me. She said, yeah, Michelle, we're serving about 40 to 50 families a month from CFB Gagetown.
It's crazy.
I said, pardon, what did you just say? And she said, yeah. And I said, does the general public know this? And she said, I don't know. You have the front line to defend our country, and they're relying on a food bank. I was literally gobsmacked at this information. To me, that's like your doctors or nurses or the people who are who work to serve you, to keep you safe, having to use a food bank in Canada, in a G7 country. I said, Jane, you've got to be kidding me. She said, Michelle, I'm not. I'm not kidding you. I barely could hear the rest of what she told me. So we went further into the food bank and we looked, and then she said, and Michelle, you should also know that most of these military families, their house is heated by gas or oil, and they pay carbon tax. And so I said, do you think carbon tax has an impact on these military families accessing food banks? She said, yes. It has an impact on everything, Michelle, because the cost of food has skyrocketed. Because the cost of housing has skyrocketed. Do you know what you need to build houses? You need materials. What do you need to get the materials? You need fuel to get them there. It's a really common sense concept that the cult on the other side of this house has doubled down on and said, we're going to fight this. Like, it's actually the most frustrating thing for Canadians to witness. And so when you have this motion and you have Canadian military families who are now going to suffer even further, hey, we're going to increase your rent. Why are they increasing their rent? These are always the things I challenge everyone at home to say, why? Why does the government need to increase their rent? Because they spend like maniacs and they have to make up for it. That's why. Right. You have to ask why in every single thing you see come through this house. Why would they increase their rent? That makes no sense. These are our frontline men and women. And also, just for note, it's April. Did you know that April is the month of the military child? I'm the Shadow Minister for Families, Children and Social Development. Children are our most precious resource in this country. Teen suicide is at an all-time high in this country. Military families already have an abnormal amount of stress in their life. Families are separated. They have to do an extreme amount of resilience. They have to have an extreme amount of resilience, these children of these military families. Do you know what you can't do for your family? Be present when you're worried about paying your bills, or even worse, how to feed them. When you have to decide, and you're sitting down, like most common sense Canadians are doing in this country, and they're sitting every night, do I have enough money for this? Do I have enough money for this? And these aren't luxuries, Madam Speaker, these are basic necessities. And this Department of National Defense wants to increase rent on military families when you have the record low recruitment and retention in history. We are short 16,000 military personnel. 16,000. I want to find you this quote that I read that was just shocking, if I can find it, if you can bear with me. The military's chaplain general says morale among troops is the lowest it's been in recent memory as many soldiers struggle with the cost of living. In a briefing note sent to the Chief of the Defense Staff, General Wayne Eyre, chaplains say more armed forces members have been asking to help make ends meet. Gee, I wonder why nobody wants to join the Canadian Forces.
Yeah.
Come work with us. You get to use a food bank. Come work with us. You won't be able to afford housing.
Yeah.
You have organizations, Homes for Heroes, who are out on the front lines trying to ensure veterans are housed. You have veterans claims coming through every MP's office in this House that are not being met. They're being disregarded. Thank you. It says so much about your country and how you treat the people that protect you. And I am very fortunate in my former career to have spent time with families of the military, of the Canadian Forces. And these people serve for something bigger than themselves. And this is how our government treats them.
Disgraceful.
We can do better. We have to do better. And I encourage everyone in this House to recognize the service, because when the day comes that you need someone to stand in front and protect you, you better hope that person is there. Because that's what they do. That's what the Canadian Forces is. And the Common Sense Conservatives stands with them. We will fight with them. And we will ensure that there is freedom for them to be able to afford to eat, heat, and house themselves. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? The Honourable.
Yeah, that amazing speech by Michelle Ferreri, and she just really hit the nail on the head here. It's so disgraceful how the Trudeau Liberals, they just do not care about anyone but themselves. Just a bunch of self-righteous, self-serving sacks of crap. We have people who are the frontline shield to Canada, people who serve and put their life on the line every day or every time they go out on a mission, and they don't get treated with the red carpet being rolled out like they should. This is disgraceful. They should have a combination that's either cheap or free for their family, get paid well. It shouldn't be like, oh, I'm sorry, hon, like head down to the food bank because we can't afford enough because I'm working in the Canadian military, which has a pathetic salary and rent is too much. Like, this is just sad and disgraceful. We are the laughing stock around the world in every aspect of Canada. Military, GDP, oh, well, thank God we got the AAA credit rating. Our economy, our housing prices, the tent cities, our wages. Canada is become an absolute joke. Trudeau and his cronies don't care. They're just running this right into the ground for their nefarious reasons, getting rich, being psychos, being lunatics, boneheads, whatever you want to call them. No person with a honest conscience would ever treat this nation like this. No leader with a heart would let this slide. They would let this happen in the military. You see this down in America too. The veterans not getting taken care of. The veterans up here not getting taken care of. These are people who put their life on the line and they got nothing in return. They got the cold shoulder from the government, the Trudeau Liberals. So after her speech there, what's weird about this is the Liberals got to reply to this, and of course, Liberals, they're going to say what they're... We all know where this is going.
Yes, you know something, Madam Speaker, it's somewhat pathetic when you listen to Conservatives try to defend their own previous record in regards to the Canadian Forces, and then have the tenacity to try to say that the Government of Canada is not doing what it should be doing for our Canadian Forces, when in fact, Madam Speaker, we have and continue to invest in our Canadian Forces far greater than the Conservative government ever did. Nor did we shut down veterans' offices. In fact, we're on target of getting to a percentage of, I believe it's about 1.7% of our GDP by 2030. Compare that to less than a percentage point under Stephen Harper, Madam Speaker. How does the Conservative Party live with itself when it actually tries to give the false impression that they care about the Canadian Forces here in Canada?
The Honourable Member for Peterborough Court.
I would expect anything less from him.
Madam Speaker, do you know what is so pathetic? Is a government that's been in power for 8 years and says, well, when that happened way back then, that's the problem.
Yeah.
And this is the reality. I think it is the most bizarre argument I've ever heard in my life, to blame the past when you have been in power for 8 years. 8 years. And there has never been this historical high usage of food bank usage by military families. But that's their argument. Madam Speaker, I think we know who's pathetic.
Yeah. Questions and comments.
She nailed it right there. It's always blaming Harper. Always blaming Harper. That's all they can do. That's just carbon tax, 8 out of 10 get more money back, and blame Harper. That's all that comes out of the Trudeau Liberals' mouths. So just pathetic losers. It's just every day you hear of another story that is just heartbreaking, and I'm glad Michelle went over there and talked to that woman at the food bank and got this story and brought it forward. This needs to be known. This needs to be heard, because we got to get Trudeau out of power, and we got to get all these NDP losers out of power too in provincial ridings. It's time to have a big blue sweep across the country and get our country back on track, because right now Canada is a disgrace and is a joke to the rest of the world. And more importantly, people are suffering in this country. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought about the speech, as well as the Liberals' nasty response. Be sure to subscribe here to my second channel. Turn on notifications here as well to get notified of these videos. Gotta keep fighting for freedom. I'll keep bringing you guys the truth. I'll see you guys on the next one.